A man worth $200 million showed up to a private dinner in Beverly Hills last year driving a 12-year-old Toyota. Nobody laughed. Nobody even noticed. Because everyone at that table already understood something most people spend their entire lives chasing the opposite of. The car you drive says less about your net worth than you think, and the truly rich figured that out a long time ago. Something shifted in the last 10 years, quietly, without a single press release or movement or hashtag. The men who used to flex Ferraris and Bentleys on Instagram started trading them in for sedans, SUVs, and in some cases, nothing flashy at all. Not because they ran out of money, not because the market crashed. Something else happened. Something that has more to do with psychology, risk, and a complete rewrite of what status actually means. Picture a 28-year-old named Daniel. He sells his first company for $4 million. Within 2 weeks, he buys a Lamborghini Huracan. Yellow, loud, impossible to miss. For exactly 11 days, it feels like the best decision of his life. People stare, strangers ask for pictures. His old college friends start treating him differently. Then the calls start. His insurance company, his accountant, a guy from a wealth management firm he's never heard of, who somehow got his number the same week the car got registered. 3 different investment opportunities land in his inbox before the month is over. A woman he matched with on a dating app brings up the car before she even asks his name. Daniel didn't buy a car. He bought a target. This is the part nobody tells you when you're 22 and dreaming about your first supercar. A loud car doesn't just announce wealth, it announces vulnerability. It tells every lawyer, every con artist, every distant cousin who suddenly wants to catch up exactly how much you might be worth and exactly how reachable you are. The wealthy men who actually keep their money figured this out fast. The ones who don't learn it the expensive way. In parts of the world where wealth visibility carries real physical risk, the calculation gets even darker. Executives in certain cities hire security details the same week they buy a flashy car, not because the car attracted attention, but because it attracted the wrong kind. Some wealthy families have quietly switched their entire fleet to unremarkable, forgettable vehicles for one reason only. A car nobody notices is a car nobody follows home. But the risk isn't even the biggest reason this shift happened. The real reason is colder and far more mathematical. A car loses roughly 20% of its value the moment it leaves the lot. By year 5, most luxury vehicles have lost more than half. Add insurance, maintenance, and the kind of repair bills that come standard with anything Italian, and you're not just losing value, you're paying a monthly tax just to keep losing it. Compare that to the alternative, the same money sitting in an index fund, a piece of commercial real estate, or a stake in a private company. One asset bleeds value every single day you own it. The other compounds, quietly, while you sleep.
Run the numbers and it stops being abstract. $400,000 invested at a modest return, left untouched for 20 years, doesn't stay $400,000. It turns into something closer to $2.5 million. That Lamborghini in Daniel's driveway wasn't a $400,000 purchase. It was a $2 million decision made in 11 days to feel something that wore off before the first oil change. There's an old story about Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, who was once one of the richest men alive and still drove a beat-up pickup truck to work every single day. People assumed it was a gimmick, some calculated humility play to make him relatable. It wasn't. He simply didn't see the point. The truck did its job. Spending more money on a different truck wouldn't have made him richer. It would have made him poorer, slower, in a way that compounds for decades. This is the part that separates the men who look rich from the men who stay rich. There's a deeper layer to this too, one that has almost nothing to do with money and everything to do with belonging. Walk into a real boardroom, not the Instagram version, the actual rooms where deals worth hundreds of millions get signed, and you'll notice something strange. Almost nobody is dressed like they have money. Nobody pulls up in something that screams for attention. In those rooms, flash is read as a warning sign. It signals that you need people to know you've made it, which usually means you haven't made it quite as much as you're pretending to. Old money learned this generations ago. New money is only just catching up. That doesn't mean the wealth disappeared from view entirely. It just moved somewhere harder to photograph. The private jet exists, but it's chartered under a company name.
The island exists, but nobody posts the coordinates.
The Flex didn't vanish. It just stopped being a car parked outside a restaurant for strangers to admire and became something only a handful of people will ever actually see. A teenager flexing a car he can barely afford is trying to convince strangers he matters. A man who's built real wealth doesn't need strangers to know anything.
His proof isn't parked in a driveway. It's sitting in a brokerage account, a property portfolio, an ownership stake nobody outside his accountant ever sees. The Flex moved from external to invisible, and invisibility, it turns out, is its own kind of power. There's also something psychological happening beneath all of this, something most people never stop to examine. Buying a luxury car often isn't really about the car. It's about closing a wound, proving something to a version of yourself that once felt small, overlooked, broke, unimpressive.
The car becomes a message sent backward in time, to a high school that didn't notice you, to a family that doubted you, to an ex who left. But here's the uncomfortable truth almost nobody says out loud. That wound doesn't close. Not with a car, not with anything external. The men who eventually figured this out stop spending to feel validated and start spending to build something that can't be taken away. And once that switch flips, a depreciating asset with leather seats stops looking like success. It starts looking like a distraction.
Daniel, the guy with the yellow Lamborghini, sold it 8 months later. Not because he needed the money, because every time he drove it, he felt like he was performing for people who didn't actually care about him, and avoiding the people who did, because they were starting to treat him differently too.
He bought a quiet, forgettable car instead. Nobody noticed. For the first time since the sale of his company, he said it actually felt like his money was his own again. That's the part that almost never gets talked about. The car wasn't just expensive, it was loud in every sense of the word. Financially, socially, emotionally. And the wealthiest men alive learned that real freedom doesn't come from being noticed. It comes from being left alone, with enough resources to do absolutely whatever you want, and nobody watching closely enough to ask why. So the next time you see a man worth more money than you'll make in 10 lifetimes, driving something completely unremarkable, don't assume he can't afford better. Assume he already tried better and found out it cost him more than money. The real flex was never the car. It was never having to prove anything at all.